morning, everyone. I'm Eric Fanning, the President and CEO of the Aerospace Industry Association. I'm honored that we are hosting the U.S. Congressional Delegation press conference this morning. In an election year, particularly one that gets more interesting by the day, it's remarkable to have such a large and important delegation come to this air show, both to highlight American innovation, but also across the ocean to emphasize the importance of partnerships and alliances that the United States has, particularly with the UK, but with countries all over the world. So, without further ado, I want to acknowledge the senators who are here today: Senator Shaheen of New Hampshire, Senator Moran of Kansas, Senator Bozeman of Arkansas, Senator Fisher of Nebraska, Senator Kennedy of Louisiana, and Senator Britt of Alabama. And with that, I will turn it over to the delegation head, Senator Shaheen. Thank you. You're welcome.
Well, thank you to Eric and to the AIA for all of the great work you do promoting the aerospace industry in the United States and around the world. And this air show is a perfect example of that. I'm delighted to be here with my co-lead in this delegation, Senator Moran from Kansas. Eric introduced the rest of the delegation, but I would point out this is bipartisan. It's also representative from across the United States. The one person who's missing this morning is Mark Kelly. He will be here later from Arizona. So we're delighted to have everyone here. We've had a great couple of days. We've also had a chance to meet with some of the representatives of the new UK government. We met with the Foreign Secretary on Friday. We're going to meet with the Defense Secretary Healy tomorrow morning. So it's a great opportunity for us to continue to cement the U.S.-UK relationship, because in fact, this air show occurs with the backdrop of the Transatlantic Alliance and how important that is. And of course, coming on the heels of the NATO summit last week in Washington, this is a great opportunity for us to showcase both the commercial and the defense side of the aviation industry. So I know some of you may want to talk about politics in the U.S., but we are here to talk about the air show. So that's what we plan to do. And I am from a small state of New Hampshire where we're very excited about our growing aerospace industry, and we have a great trade relationship with the United Kingdom in the industry, which we are very proud of. This is a chance, as Eric said, to really showcase American innovation. And there's nothing like watching the F-35 go across the sky to recognize just how important that innovation is, both to our defense and also to commerce in the United States. It's also a chance for us to build on what has happened with the National Security Supplemental Budget, the investments in our defense base to support Ukraine, the Indo-Pacific, Taiwan, and the defense base itself in the United States. And we are very proud of having that passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. This year, a majority of this funding is being spent in the United States to replenish. It's also a chance for us to support the industry in ways that in New Hampshire we feel positive about. We have a lot of small businesses in my state, and this is a chance for us to connect those small businesses with some of the bigger players, to point out those partnerships that exist. And I know there have been some challenges with supply chain in the last year, but we're seeing those get worked out in ways that are really important to the industry. It's also an opportunity for us to showcase our industry in ways that our adversaries can see, and see what they're up against. And I think that's really important, because our national security, the national security for the NATO alliance for the West, is about the kind of innovation that people are going to see at this air show. And that's important for our adversaries to see, because it serves as a deterrence. So again, I'm very honored to be here with all of these senators who support the industry, and particularly honored to be here with my co-lead Jerry Moran from Kansas. He and I not only have led this delegation for the second year in a row, but we co-chair the Commerce, Justice, and Science Appropriations Subcommittee. And as we're thinking about what we need to fund, what we need to invest in the United States, this is an opportunity for us to see some of those investments that are so critical, because many of the delegation are on the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, and all of us are on either Appropriations or the Armed Services Committee. So again, a great opportunity for us to talk to all of those people we need to work with in order to ensure that we have a strong defense industrial base. So, Senator Moran.
Senator
nice
Shaheen,
to be
thank
with
you. Senator Shaheen, thank you for your kindness, and thanks for leading this effort to have members of the United States Senate at the air show. A significant component in the economies of all of our states, but something hugely important for the United States of America. And I'm going to quote you when I get back to the appropriations process. I'm happy to co-lead this CODEL, but I'm particularly pleased to be the co-leader of the appropriations subcommittee with you. So thank you for elevating me, at least slightly. Look, what's taking place at this show. We're pleased that AIA is here representing our country, representing our nation's industries that manufacture and produce research and provide science behind innovation. But from a Kansan's point of view, Kansas, the air capital of the world, has a lot at stake in our relationships with companies around the globe. And so I'm pleased particularly to be here as a Kansan, representing an industry that employs 100,000 Kansans, and trying to make certain that our companies have an equal and fair shot at business globally. But I would say, more than that provincial reason to be here, our country faces huge and significant challenges. It's a very difficult time in the world, and our allies we need to have more allies. We need to strengthen those relationships. Our adversaries are aligned to make an effort to have the demise of the United States. And what happens in aviation and aerospace determines so much of the future of our country. Certainly economically, what happens in aviation and aerospace is a huge component of our nation's economy. We're an export industry, and we generate lots of income that comes from places outside the United States. But in this troubled time, I'd highlight how important it is for our national defense to have a strong aviation and aerospace industry, and to make certain that we have the necessary tools in the United States to compete globally, and to make sure that the latest technologies and sciences are advanced in our country. So in dangerous times, this industry is hugely important. In all other times, it's hugely important. And my colleagues and I are pleased to be here to advocate for it and learn and support those who work in aviation and aerospace in our country. And I join my colleagues in responding to your questions, and I share Senator Shaheen's adamant insistence that this press conference be related to the industry, not the politics of today's world. Although she probably is more adamant than I am.
Now here I was thinking it was going to be all about the Republican convention. Questions? Yes.
Jeff Faustus, Spaces. Question for both you and Senator Moran. In your role as CGS appropriations leaders, the full committee is marking up the spending bill later this week. Can you give any preview about what it will contain, particularly for NASA and that theme of American innovation, and how it might differ from what your House colleagues have advanced in appropriations?
Well, we're very pleased to have reached agreement on our bill. It's going to be coming up on the 25th, along with several other appropriations bills. We have increased funding for NASA. I think Senator Moran will speak to that as well. We've also increased funding for the National Science Foundation, which is so important as we think about the research and the workforce development that needs to happen. So despite the challenging fiscal year because of the Fiscal Responsibility Act, and we have to remember that that carries over to this upcoming year as well, we feel like we have made a great down payment on the investments we need to make to ensure that America continues to stay on the cutting edge in space, as well as in the other areas in our portfolio.
I would just add that we're supporters of NASA and space it matters greatly. We're from all the aspects of NASA, every one of them is important to the country. I would emphasize that in last year's appropriation bill and in this year's appropriation bill, it's been a goal of mine and others to make certain that Artemis is protected and that our plans to be on the moon are advanced. And while it certainly is a difficult time in the total dollars that we've allocated to our subcommittee, we have prioritized making certain that that's the case. It matters. We do not want to be the country that is watching China advance their space exploration program at our disadvantage. And it's important to us nationally to make certain that those investments continue.
Next question. No other questions? Yes.
Brian Epstein with Aviation Week. A few months ago, you raised some concerns about Boeing's acquisition of Spirit and how that would impact defense programs. Now that the agreement is out there, have your concerns been alleviated?
So I would paraphrase your question. The decision of Boeing to reacquire or to acquire or merge with Spirit is a private sector decision, and I support whatever the best outcome is for those two companies. But what I've raised with Department of Defense officials in hearings and one-on-one is the recognition that the focus on Boeing at the moment is clearly in the commercial side of their business, and that's hugely important for the country. It's important for this industry. There is no future for aviation in Kansas or across the country if Americans aren't safe and don't feel safe in flying. So the goal of combining these two companies is to increase the capacity of Boeing, the resulting company, to perform at standards that are hugely important to Boeing and to the nation, but particularly to those who fly. What I've tried to point out, let me say it differently, what I have pointed out and continue to point out as late as last night in conversations with the Secretary of the Air Force and Dr. LaPlante at procurement at the Department of Defense, is a number of those jobs at Spirit, about 2,000, are related to defense work that Spirit does for other companies. It's not Boeing work. Spirit does a huge amount of commercial work for Boeing. They do work for Boeing in the defense sector, but there's also Northrop Grumman, General Atomics, Lockheed Martin, Textron, companies that are utilizing Spirit to do work for them. And I want to make certainly that work continues in Kansas, but I particularly want to make certain that we do not do anything in this acquisition that diminishes the capability of meeting our defense needs nationwide or globally by any kind of pause, any kind of disruption in the supply chains. I just want to make certain that in this merger, and I don't know the details of this acquisition, they've announced the acquisition is occurring. I think there are still things to be worked out, but I want to make certain that companies who do defense with Spirit have a place to do that work either with Spirit in the future or in Kansas otherwise. But setting aside my Kansas hat, our country and the challenges we face and the supply chain issues that we are trying to meet needs to make sure there's no loss of work, no loss of time in providing the contractual obligations to those other companies that are now occurring in Spirit.
One last question. Kennedy, did you want to respond?
I wanted to answer your question, I can do it from here. I wanted to answer your question about the budget. I speak only for me and only for my Energy and Water Development Subcommittee. I'm the ranking member. Senator Murray, who also is chairman of appropriations, is the chair of that committee. And again, speaking only for me and for my subcommittee, what you're going to see over the next few months in the Senate, in my judgment, is a lot of play acting. We're marking up bills without knowing how much money we have to spend. That, in my opinion, is a very wrong-headed way to try to put together a budget. Only in Washington would someone approach it that way. We're going to have a new president, and we're going to have a new Congress. And I'm not minimizing the importance of us doing our work in the subcommittee, but once again, at least from my subcommittee, it's all the way active. And all those numbers are gonna change. And our challenge is to somehow strike a balance between and among the facts that we're running huge deficits. We have a large debt. We have to increase defense spending. And, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act measures are before us. We have to make a decision about that. Now, you don't have to be Mensa material to see that those interests are all competing, and something's gonna have to give. And that's why this budget's a long way from being put together.
Last question.
Well, I would agree that it's a long way from being put together. The reality is, as appropriators, our responsibility is to get a budget done. And the most important thing we can do for the industry is provide budget certainty. That's what appropriations should be doing. So that's my goal, and hopefully we're all on that same page, yes.
Dave Sherberson from Reuters. Can I ask all of you, both Boeing and Airbus are going through a lot of supply chain issues that can't meet the demand for airplanes now. Are there specific actions that Congress can take to address the supply chain? And separately, obviously Boeing's going through a lot of trouble since the MAX 9 door plug crisis. What do you hear from the British government and others about Boeing? Do you see any lack of confidence in Boeing from people you've spoken to here as a result of what's happened?
I certainly haven't heard any concerns. There's a recognition that there are actions being taken in the United States to address some of the issues with Boeing, and so there has been nothing raised with me. I think, as I said, the most important thing we can do to help the industry in the United States is to ensure budget certainty, so that people understand that we are gonna get the budget done. We're gonna try and get it done on time, within the fiscal year, and they can count on the fact that those contracts, those negotiations with the federal government are gonna get